This is the mission history for the second week of May, delivered by Pastor James Huang. And today, we're diving into the truly incredible story of how one person's single act of compassion created ripples that, believe it or not, are still being felt over a century later. So, let's meet the person at the very heart of our story. He was an American medical missionary who traveled clear across the world to serve the people of Korea, a man named Dr. William Forsyth. Dr. Forsyth arrived in Korea way back in 1904. He was sent by the Southern Presbyterian Church, but he wasn't just a preacher. He was a doctor. And he poured everything he had into his work, running an orphanage and providing traveling medical care around Jeonju. His life was all about healing and service. Now, when you look at his timeline, you see his life in Korea was actually quite short. But wow, was it eventful. You could say it was a life marked by this profound dedication, but also by some immense personal challenges. And they started almost right away. Yeah, that challenge came early, and it was unbelievably severe. Just a single year after he arrived, Dr. Forsyth's commitment was tested in a way that was just brutal. So the story goes that one day in 1905, he was helping a person who had been attacked by robbers. He was in the middle of tending to this victim's wounds when the robbers actually came back. And this time, they attacked him. And the attack was absolutely vicious. I mean, his ear was severed, his skull was fractured. His injuries were so bad, so life-threatening that he had no choice but to return to the United States for treatment. But here's what's just amazing. This horrific experience didn't stop him. For most people, that would have been the end of the story, right? But for Dr. Forsyth, it was just a pause. Unbelievably, 2 years later, he was right back in Korea, this time in Mokpo, completely ready to continue his mission. This incredible resilience, this absolute dedication, it all builds to one single moment that would come to define his entire legacy. In 1909, Dr. Forsyth was on a journey that presented him with a truly impossible choice. Okay, so picture this. On one hand, he's racing against the clock. His friend and colleague, Dr. Owen, had collapsed in Gwangju, and Forsyth was rushing to save his life. But on the other hand, he comes across a woman on the side of the road suffering from Hansen's disease, what people used to call leprosy. She was a total outcast, just left there to die alone. So, what would he do? He had this impossible choice to make. Does he keep going on his urgent mission to save a friend's life? Or does he stop for a stranger that society had completely turned its back on? He chose compassion. Without hesitation, he gently lifted the suffering woman onto his own pony. And then, holding the reins, he walked the entire rest of the way to Gwangju beside her. He chose to help the person who was right there in front of him. Now, Dr. Forsyth had no way of knowing it at the time, but that single selfless act was about to set off the most incredible chain reaction you can imagine. See, as he arrived in Gwangju, carefully helping the sick woman down from his pony, he was being watched. And in the crowd that day was a man named Choi Haeng-jong, a man known throughout the entire city as a violent, feared gangster. And this was the start of that ripple effect. Seeing a foreigner show such unbelievable care for an outcast moved this gangster, Choi Haeng-jong, so deeply that he ended up converting to Christianity. Then, the word started to spread about this blue-eyed doctor, and soon, patients were flocking to Gwangju. Forsyth's example inspired other missionaries, who then committed to caring for these patients, which ultimately led to the founding of a hospital. Let me tell you, this was not easy. There was intense opposition from the local people, who were terrified of the disease. But the missionaries, fired up by Forsyth's incredible compassion, they pushed through. And so, just a few years after that fateful encounter on the road, a hospital was built, and that institution would eventually grow to become the renowned Yesu Eyang Yuan, a center for care that, amazingly, continues its work to this very day. Dr. Forsyth's life was tragically short, but his legacy of compassionate service, well, it has endured for generations. On May 9th, 1918, Dr. Forsyth passed away. He was only 45 years old. His death was a result of a combination of endemic diseases and some lingering complications from that brutal attack all those years earlier. And his passing was mourned so deeply by the many, many Koreans whose lives he had touched. You know, maybe his legacy is best summed up by the very gangster whose life he changed. In a tribute to Dr. Forsyth, Choi Haeng-jong quoted Martin Luther, saying these words perfectly captured the spirit of the doctor's life, a life lived completely and totally in service to other people. Pastor James Huang, who served as a missionary in China and now serves in Maryland, USA, is a researcher of Korean mission history. He shares his book Remember and Repay, 52 Weeks of Mission Meditations, every week.